The bridge of the Coalition flagship Harmony's Edge shook violently as another wave of Vex plasma bolts slammed into their weakening shields. Red warning lights bathed everything in an ominous glow, while alarm klaxons wailed throughout the massive vessel. Commander Velthor gripped his command chair with all 6 of his powerful arms. His reptilian features twisted with desperation as he watched his fleet die around him. "Shield generators at 12%, shouted Lieutenant Kazara from her engineering station, her normally melodic voice now strained with panic. The young Altarian's blue skin had turned pale with fear as she desperately rerouted power from non-essential systems. "I cannot maintain defensive barriers much longer, Commander." Through the massive viewport, Velthor watched in horror as the peaceful dawn erupted in a brilliant fireball. The elegant cruiser, home to over 3,000 Coalition souls, simply vanished in a flash of superheated plasma. Seconds later, the gentle breeze followed suit. Its graceful curves twisted into molten metal as Vex bioweapons tore through its hull like tissue paper. "Sir, we've lost the peaceful dawn and gentle breeze," reported his tactical officer, her crystalline voice cracking with stress. Commander Zeleneth had served with Velthor for 15 years, and he'd never heard such despair in her tone. "The Vex are advancing on all fronts. Our forces are being systematically eliminated. Long-range sensors show at least 40 more bioships incoming." Velthar's mandibles clicked in frustration, a nervous habit his species had developed over millions of years. 3 months since the Vex swarm had emerged from the dark spaces beyond the galactic rim, and every single engagement had been a massacre. The Coalition's centuries-old philosophy of defensive warfare and minimal casualties meant absolutely nothing against an enemy that seemed to exist solely to consume and destroy everything in its path. The Vex weren't like other hostile species the Coalition had encountered. They didn't want territory or resources or political power. They simply wanted to devour all organic life in the galaxy, converting it into more of their twisted biomechanical hybrid forms. Their ships looked like massive insects crossed with starships pulsing with organic components that healed damage almost as quickly as Coalition weapons could inflict it. "Communication from the Rising Hope, sir," called out Ensign Turville from his station. "Captain Murthan reports his engines are failing. He's requesting permission to ram the nearest Vex bioship." "Denied," Velthor snapped. "We don't sacrifice crews needlessly. Order all remaining ships to fall back to Rally Point Gamma. We'll regroup." And his words were cut off as another massive explosion lit up space. The Coalition destroyer Swift Current had taken a direct hit from what the Vex called a flesh render weapon. The beam literally dissolved the ship's molecular bonds, turning solid matter into cosmic dust in seconds. Commander Zeleneth said, "Quietly at current casualty rates, we'll lose the entire outer rim within the week. The inner colonies will follow within a month. We need help, and we need it now." Velthor closed his large eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. The Coalition had been built on principles of peace, cooperation, and mutual understanding among the galaxy's civilized species. For over 1,000 years, it had maintained order and prosperity across hundreds of star systems. It was all crumbling in the face of an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, negotiated with, or understood. "Open a priority channel across all frequencies," Velthar ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "Emergency military assistance request, maximum broadcast power. Any and all capable species, please respond immediately. The outer rim is falling. Repeat, the outer rim is falling." For hours, the desperate message echoed across subspace channels, reaching every corner of Coalition space and beyond. The responses came slowly, each one another nail in the coffin of hope. The peaceful Villani had already evacuated their core worlds. The warrior Krillian Empire was in full retreat after losing half their battle fleet. The technologically advanced Nixari had sealed their borders and refused all communication. Species after species sent the same message. They were pulling back to defend their homeworlds, abandoning any pretense of mutual defense. The Great Coalition was fracturing under pressure, each member looking out only for themselves. Velthor slumped in his command chair, watching his tactical display show more red icons disappearing by the minute. Soon he would have to give the order to abandon the Outer Rim entirely, leaving billions of civilians to face the Vex alone. Then, just as he prepared to sound the general evacuation order, a new signal cut through the static in despair. Coalition. Forces, this is Captain Deho of the Terran Defense Force. The voice was strange, speaking an accented galactic standard with odd inflections. We received your distress call. Reinforcements are en route to your coordinates. Prepare landing zones for our ground forces and fleet support. Baldera sensory stalks twitched in confusion, Terran. I don't have that species in our database. Communications officer's fingers danced frantically over her console, pulling up star charts and species records. Sir, the signal originated from a system designated Sol-3 in the outer spiral arm. It's listed as unexplored territory, Class 12 Deathworld status. How could intelligent life even survive on a world like that? Class 12 Deathworlds were the most hostile environments in the galaxy. Extreme weather, toxic atmospheres, dangerous predators, unstable geology. The few scientific expeditions that had ever visited such worlds had suffered massive casualties just from landing. Desperate times call for desperate measures, Velthar muttered. Hope flickering in his chest for the first time in months. Send them our complete tactical data and prepare for whatever shows up. At this point, we'll take help from anyone willing to fight. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace with all the subtlety of a meteor shower, their arrival sending shockwaves. Through the Coalition's sensor arrays, warning alarms blared across every ship and station as the massive vessels materialized from the void, their engine signatures unlike anything in the galactic database. Commander Velthor stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. These weren't the sleek, elegant ships he expected from a spacefaring civilization. The human vessels were angular, scarred chunks of metal that looked like they'd been built in a shipyard and then dragged through every war zone in the galaxy. No smooth curves or artistic flourishes like Coalition ships. No gleaming holes or decorative elements. Just brutal, uncompromising functionality wrapped in armor plating that bore the scars of countless battles. Sir, Lieutenant Kasara whispered from her station. Their ships are reading as ... primitive. Basic fusion drives, projectile weapons, crude armor plating. But the energy signatures are massive. How are they generating so much power with such simple technology? The lead human vessel, a blocky dreadnought that dwarfed even Coalition battleships, transmitted docking coordinates. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals, as if it had been repaired so many times that no original surface remained. Weapon ports bristled from every angle, and strange markings covered the armor in what looked like battle tallies. Those aren't decorations, observed Tactical Officer Zillineth, her crystalline features reflecting the display's glow. Those are impact scars. Burn marks from energy weapons. These ships have seen serious combat. Ambassador Kyung-Soo stepped off the transport shuttle onto Coalition Station Omega. And immediately, every alien in the massive docking bay took several steps backward. The human was shorter than most species present, but there was something about his presence that made even the largest creatures nervous. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, each step purposeful and controlled. His armor looked primitive, compared to Coalition technology, but it was obviously functional. Scratched and dented metal plates covered a flexible undersuit, and multiple weapons hung from his belt with the casual ease of someone who'd used them countless times. Most disturbing were the weapons themselves. They didn't gleam like ceremonial pieces or pristine military equipment. They looked worn, used, and deadly. By the 7 moons, whispered a Falarian diplomat to his companion. Look at his eyes. Those are the eyes of someone who's killed before. Velthar approached carefully, trying to project calm authority despite his racing heart. This human radiated danger in a way that set every instinct screaming. Yet they'd answered the Coalition's call for help when no one else would. Ambassador, Velthor greeted him, working to keep his voice steady. We deeply appreciate your response to our call for aid, but I must inform you of the extreme dangers we face. The Vex use chemical weapons that dissolve organic matter, sonic disruptors that can shatter bone, and they operate in environments that are lethal to most organic life forms in the galaxy. Kung Su removed his helmet with practiced ease, revealing a face that told its own story of survival. Deep scars crossed his weathered features, and his skin had the tough, leathery quality of someone who'd spent years under a harsh sun. His dark eyes held a hardness that spoke of battles won and friends lost. "Commander," he said with a slight smile that didn't reach those dangerous eyes, "where I come from, we call Tuesday morning chemical weapons and sonic disruptors. What's the current tactical situation?" Before Velthor could respond, more humans began streaming off their shuttles. Each one carried themselves with the same predatory confidence as their ambassador. A female soldier named Biora was calmly discussing ammunition loads with her squad, her tone suggesting they were planning a grocery run rather than a battle against galaxy-devouring monsters. "We'll need the armor-piercing rounds for their bioships," she was saying matter-of-factly, "and pack extra incendiaries. These bugs sound like they don't like fire." Near the far wall, a demolitions expert called Taman was examining captured Vex biological samples with the kind of intense interest that made Coalition scientists uncomfortable. He poked at the writhing tissue with a metal probe, taking notes as it tried to attack the instrument. "Fascinating," he murmured. "Looks like their cellular structure breaks down around 600 degrees Celsius. That's actually pretty fragile." Home, our volcanic regions, run hotter than that naturally. Belthar began explaining the Vex advance patterns, pulling up holographic displays of their typical attack formations. The Vex deploy in hive formations of approximately 10,000 units per wave. They're most dangerous in close-quarters combat and toxic environments. Our standard protocol is to maintain maximum distance and use long-range bombardment too, Commander. Interrupted a human officer named Hai Jin, her fingers dancing over a portable scanner. "Our preliminary data shows the Vex prefer operating temperatures around 400 degrees. Kelvin and atmospheric pressure at 3.2 standard units. Is that correct?" "Yes, precisely," Velthar confirmed, impressed by their quick analysis. "Which is exactly why we cannot engage them directly in their preferred environmental conditions. Those parameters would kill most Coalition species within minutes. That's cooler than our equatorial regions and lower pressure than our deep ocean operations." Hyjin noted with casual indifference, as if discussing the weather. "Won't be a problem for our forces." Belthar's mandibles clicked in confusion, a sound that had been growing more frequent since the humans arrived. What kind of world produced beings who considered such extreme conditions not just survivable, but comfortable? "I'm sorry," he said carefully, "but did you say those conditions are actually mild compared to your home environment?" Captain Deho, who had just joined the group, nodded casually. "Earth's a tough neighborhood, Commander. Our home planet throws hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and ice ages at us on a regular basis. We've learned to adapt." A Coalition medical officer, who'd been monitoring the conversation, stepped forward, her scanner beeping frantically as she aimed it at the humans. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Their bone density is 3 times galactic average. Their muscle tissue is incredibly dense, and their cardiovascular system. They have redundant organs to kidneys, backup liver functions, extra lung capacity," Kunsu confirmed with amusement. "You tend to develop redundancies when your planet keeps trying to kill you." Around the docking bay, more Coalition personnel had gathered to observe these strange new allies. The humans seemed completely at ease, despite being surrounded by dozens of alien species, some of whom were natural predators in their own right. If anything, it was the aliens who seemed nervous. Commander Zeleneth whispered urgently. "Their weapon signatures are reading as chemical propellants and kinetic projectiles. How can such primitive technology be effective against Vex bioarmor?" Before Velthor could answer, Sergeant Minho overheard and grinned. "Sometimes the old ways work best," he said, patting the large rifle slung across his back. "These bugs might adapt to energy weapons and exotic particles, but they probably haven't figured out how to evolve past getting shot with a really big bullet." The casual way he said it sent chills through the assembled Coalition forces. These humans weren't just confident. They were talking about fighting the most dangerous enemy in Galactic history like it was a routine pest control operation, Velthar realized with growing amazement that perhaps, for the first time since this war began, the coalition might actually have a chance. The first joint operation was a complete disaster for everyone except the humans, and Commander Velthar watched it unfold with a mixture of horror and fascination. From the bridge of his command ship, the planet Kethmer hung before them like a vision of hell itself. Massive methane storms swirled across its surface, creating lightning displays that could be seen from orbit. The atmosphere was a toxic soup of chemicals that would eat through most known materials in minutes. Volcanic activity spewed additional poisons into the air, while acidic rain fell constantly, turning the landscape into a bubbling, corrosive wasteland. "Hey, sir, the environmental readings are off the charts," reported Lieutenant Kasara, her voice tight with concern. Surface temperature is fluctuating between 380 and 420 degrees Kelvin. Atmospheric pressure is crushing. The acid concentration in the rain is stronger than most industrial solvents. The Vex had chosen this world specifically because they knew no coalition force could operate there effectively. 3 previous assault attempts had ended in catastrophic failure, with hundreds of coalition soldiers dying from environmental exposure before they could even locate the enemy. The specialized environmental suits had failed within minutes, dissolved by the acidic atmosphere or crushed by the extreme pressure. The atmospheric conditions are absolutely lethal. Velthar warned Captain Deho as the human dropships powered up their engines. Our most advanced biosuits failed within minutes. The acid concentration alone will eat through any known protective material. We lost an entire battalion to environmental hazards before we could even engage the Vex. Captain Deho was methodically checking his gear, which looked disturbingly basic compared to the high-tech environmental suits the Coalition had developed. His armor was simple metal plates over what appeared to be heavy fabric, with a basic breathing apparatus that seemed almost primitive. "Is about pH 2.3, Deho finished, glancing at his scanner readings. "My home city of Busan gets rain that's pH 1.8 during monsoon season." "We'll be fine, Commander." Velthar's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Captain, I don't think you understand the severity of the situation. This environment will kill you in minutes. We need to develop specialized equipment." "Conduct extensive atmospheric testing, Commander," interrupted Sergeant Bora as she loaded her weapon with casual efficiency. "We appreciate the concern, but we've been dealing with hostile environments our whole lives. This planet actually looks kind of pleasant compared to some places on Earth." The human dropships launched without fanfare, their crude-looking vessels diving straight into the raging storm systems that had destroyed Coalition aircraft on previous missions. Velthar watched the tactical display with growing anxiety as the human signatures disappeared into the toxic clouds. "Sir, we're losing contact with the human forces," reported Communications Officer Zillaneth. "The atmospheric interference is too strong for our standard equipment." "Wait," Kasara called out. "I'm getting audio transmission on a different frequency. They're using some kind of low-tech radio system that's cutting through the interference." Filled the bridge speakers, then cleared to reveal calm human voices, coordinating their assault. There was no panic, no fear, just professional military communication, as if they were conducting a routine training exercise. "Alpha Team, this is Bravo Team," came Sergeant Minho's steady voice. "We're on the ground and moving to target. Visibility is about 50 meters in this soup, but thermal imaging is working fine." "Copy that, Bravo Team," replied Team Leader Haijin. "Watch out for the acid geysers. They're actually kind of pretty when they light up the methane clouds." Velthar stared at the speakers in amazement. They were commenting on the beauty of chemical reactions that would dissolve most beings in seconds. The first Vex sonic attack came 20 minutes later. Aliens had detected the human intrusion and responded with their most devastating weapon, a sonic disruptor that generated sound waves. It's powerful enough to shatter bone and rupture organs. The same weapon had completely incapacitated an entire coalition battalion during the second assault attempt. "Contact front," came Minho's calm voice over the radio. "Sonic disruptors at bearing 290, sounds like construction equipment from back home." "Copy that," replied another human voice. Switching to sound dampeners, anyone got earplugs? Velthar couldn't believe what he was hearing. The humans were treating a weapon that had devastated coalition forces like a minor inconvenience. The grainy tactical feeds transmitted by the human forces, Velthor watched something impossible unfold. The humans moved through the toxic environment like they belonged there. Their formations perfectly adapted to terrain that would kill most galactic citizens in minutes. When Vex bioweapons created additional acid fog to blind their enemies, the humans simply switched to thermal imaging and continued their methodical advance. "This is incredible," whispered Tactical Officer Zillaneth. "They're not just surviving in that environment, they're using it tactically." Specialist Jae-sung provided the perfect example. As Vex reinforcements emerged from underground tunnels, the human soldier calmly positioned himself near a natural gas vent. Using some kind of improvised channeling system, he redirected the planet's own toxic atmosphere into the Vex tunnel network. "Gas attack incoming," Jae-sung reported matter-of-factly. Using the planet's natural methane-sulfur mixture to clear out their tunnels nicely, the results were devastating. Vex bioforms that had been immune to coalition chemical weapons began dying in massive numbers as their own preferred environment was turned against them. The humans had weaponized the very conditions that made the planet uninhabitable to everyone else. "How are they doing this?" Kezara whispered, her voice filled with awe. Sir Zillaneth added, "They're not just fighting the Vex, they're making the entire planet fight alongside them." Captain Deho's voice crackled over the radio as his team systematically destroyed Vex biostructures that had resisted coalition attacks for months. "Command, this is Strike Team Alpha. We're encountering some resistance, but nothing we haven't seen before. These Vex remind me of the giant centipedes we get in the Amazon back home. Same basic strategy works. You hit them hard, hit them fast, and don't let them surround you." Velthar realized with growing amazement that he was watching predators at work. These humans weren't just soldiers. They were apex predators from a world that had spent millions of years trying to kill them. Every challenge that world had thrown at them had only made them more dangerous, more adaptable, more capable of turning any environment into a weapon. Commander Zillaneth said quietly, "I think we've been approaching this war all wrong. We've been trying to fight the Vex on their terms, in their preferred conditions, but the humans are making the Vex fight on human terms instead." As reports continued to stream in of human victories across the planet's surface, Velthor began to understand something fundamental about these strange new allies. They weren't just reinforcements. They were a completely different kind of warrior, forged by a world that had taught them to survive anything the universe could throw at them, and now they were bringing those hard-won lessons to the stars. Vex had ruled the galactic battlefield for 3 months, but they had never encountered anything like human tactics. What happened next would be remembered as the moment warfare itself changed forever. For over 1,000 years, galactic warfare had followed strict civilized conventions that every species respected: minimal environmental damage, protection of civilian infrastructure, and strategic objectives that preserved planets for future habitation. Even the most aggressive species like the Krillian Empire followed these unwritten rules. War was conducted with honor, precision, and respect for the worlds being fought over. Humans approached war like survivors of a world that had been actively trying to kill them since the day they evolved consciousness. Lieutenant Sujin's squad was pinned down deep inside a massive Vex nest complex on the mining world of Zarian 7. The enemy had turned the entire underground facility into a nightmare maze of biomechanical corridors that pulsed with alien life. Acidic secretions dripped from the walls, and the air itself seemed to writhe with microscopic Vex organisms. "We're trapped in Sector 7, Sujin reported calmly into her radio. Even as Vex warrior forms pressed their attack from 3 directions, they've got us surrounded, and conventional weapons aren't making much of a dent in their bioarmor." That's when the Vex deployed their most devastating close-quarters weapon. The ground itself began to bubble and dissolve as a powerful biological agent spread outward from hidden vents. The chemical compound turned solid rock into a corrosive soup that would eat through anything. Organic in seconds. Any coalition force would have immediately called for emergency evacuation. The environmental hazard protocols demanded immediate retreat to prevent unnecessary casualties. But Sujin wasn't following coalition protocols. She watched the corrosive compound spread for exactly 30 seconds, timing its rate of expansion and noting how it reacted with different types of rock. Then she keyed her radio with the kind of calm that only came from years of surviving impossible situations. "Command, this is Lieutenant Sujin. I need geological survey data on this region immediately. Specifically, I need tectonic activity reports, fault line locations, and underground water table maps." Captain Deho's voice crackled back through the interference. "Sujin, what exactly are you planning down there? Back home?" "We have a saying," Sujin replied, already pulling out her scanner and directing her demolitions expert, Corporal Dongwu, toward specific structural points in the cave system. "If the mountain won't come to you, bring the mountain down on your enemies." The coalition liaison officer, a nervous Altarian named Keshtel, broke into the conversation with obvious panic. "Lieutenant, you cannot be serious. At the environmental damage would be catastrophic. Locals will be furious about the ecological impact." "The locals evacuated 3 weeks ago when the Vex arrived," Sujin replied with deadly calm. Watching Dongwu place charges at precise locations she'd calculated based on the geological data, and dead Vex don't reproduce, so I'd say we're doing the ecology a favor. What happened next defied every rule of civilized warfare. Sujin had identified a natural fault line running directly beneath the Vex nest complex. By placing explosives at specific stress points and timing the detonations with seismic precision, she could trigger a controlled avalanche that would bury the entire facility. "Dongwu, I need charges at coordinates 247, 338, and 451, she ordered. "Set them for sequential detonation with a 3-second delay between each blast." "You want to bring down the whole mountain?" Dongwu asked, with a grin that suggested he found the idea entertaining rather than terrifying. "Not the whole mountain," Sujin corrected. "Just the part with the Vex in it." 20 minutes later, she triggered the sequence. The explosions themselves were relatively small, but they hit the fault line at exactly the right angle and timing. The mountain groaned, shifted, and then collapsed with the force of a natural disaster. 3 square kilometers of Vex infrastructure disappeared under 1 million tons of rock and stone. The planet's own geology had become a weapon in human hands. But Sujin's mountain-moving trick was just the beginning. Across the star system, other human units were rewriting the rules of warfare in ways that left coalition observers speechless. Staff Sergeant Wunji found herself facing a massive Vex fleet reinforcement heading toward the inner planets. Instead of engaging in traditional ship-to-ship combat, she studied the gravitational dynamics of the local solar system and noticed something interesting. A small moon was beginning to collapse into the system's primary star, creating unpredictable gravitational fluctuations. "Command, this is Yunji," she reported from her position aboard a human cruiser. "Going to need precise timing coordinates. For the next solar flare cycle, EUN-G, what are you thinking?" asked Captain Deho. "I'm thinking that Vex bioships probably don't handle stellar radiation very well," she replied. "And I'm thinking that collapsing moon is creating a gravitational slingshot effect that could redirect their entire fleet, using a combination of tractor beams, gravitational calculations that would have impressed coalition physicists, and perfect timing. Yunji managed to use the collapsing moon's gravity well to redirect the entire Vex reinforcement fleet directly into a massive solar flare. The bioships evolved for deep space conditions, instantly incinerated by the star's fury. Meanwhile, on the frozen world of Kepler 44c, specialist Wu Jin faced a different challenge. The Vex had established a massive breeding facility beneath the planet's frozen methane ocean. The facility was protected by kilometers of ice and toxic atmosphere that made conventional assault impossible. Wu Jin studied the situation for exactly 10 minutes, then began calculating chemical reactions with the kind of focus usually reserved for advanced laboratory research. "I need oxygen canisters," he reported to his team. "Lots of them. I need them placed at very specific locations under the ice." "Wu Jin, what are you planning?" asked his squad leader. I'm going to turn this entire ocean into a bomb, he replied matter-of-factly. The methane-oxygen reaction should be more than sufficient to sterilize the Vex facility. The explosion was visible from orbit. The entire frozen ocean became a fireball that lasted for 3 days, completely eliminating the Vex breeding facility and turning the planet's atmosphere into a temporary inferno coalition. Command watched these developments with a mixture of fascination and horror. The humans weren't just fighting the Vex, they were treating the entire universe as their personal arsenal. Commander Tactical Officer Zillaneth whispered to Velthor, "They're not following any known rules of engagement. They're using physics, chemistry, planetary dynamics, stellar mechanics. How do they even think of these things?" Velthor could only shake his head in amazement as reports continued to pour in. Human forces were collapsing asteroid fields onto Vex positions, redirecting comets into bioship formations, and somehow managing to weaponize everything from tidal forces to magnetic field fluctuations. Ambassador Kuhn, who had been quietly observing the tactical displays, finally spoke. Up. His expression was grim, but there was a hint of pride in his voice. "Commander, on Earth, everything is constantly trying to kill you. The weather throws hurricanes, tornadoes, and ice storms at you without warning. The ground moves under your feet with earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The animals are predators that see you as food. Even the plants are often poisonous or dangerous. We learn to survive by making everything else work for us instead of against us. It's not a choice or a strategy, it's evolution in action." As the reports continued to stream in, Velthar began to understand something profound about these human allies. They hadn't just brought superior technology or overwhelming numbers to the fight against the Vex. They had brought something far more dangerous. The mindset of a species that had spent millions of years learning to weaponize reality itself. 6 months after first contact, the impossible had happened. The Vex swarm, which had devoured entire star systems and driven the galaxy's greatest civilizations to the brink of extinction, was retreating, not just falling back to regroup, but running in full panic from sectors they'd held unopposed for over a year. Commander Velthor stood on the bridge of the Harmony's edge, staring at tactical displays that would have seemed like fantasy just half a year ago. Red markers showing Vex positions were disappearing by the dozens, replaced by blue human advancement indicators. Species that had fled their homeworlds were sending cautious messages asking if it was safe to return. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Kasara, her voice filled with wonder, "we're receiving surrender broadcasts from Vex bioships across 17 different systems. They're actually retreating to the Galactic Rim. The war wasn't over yet." Intelligence reports indicated that the largest Vex bioship ever encountered had crash-landed in the Helix Nebula after a failed hyperspace jump. The massive vessel, easily the size of a small moon, had embedded itself deep into the volcanic world of Pyrrhion 3. Coalition analysts estimated it could spawn millions of new Vex warriors if left unchecked. The problem was that Pyrrhion 3 made previous battlefields look like vacation resorts. The planet's surface was a hellish maze of constantly erupting volcanoes, rivers of molten lava that flowed like water, and toxic gas clouds that could dissolve metal. Gravitational anomalies from the planet's unstable core made orbital approach nearly impossible, and the atmospheric pressure was crushing. "The system is a total loss," declared Coalition Admiral Thermac during the emergency strategy meeting. "No known technology can operate in those conditions. We should establish a quarantine perimeter and monitor the situation." The other Coalition commanders nodded in agreement. It was the sensible, civilized response. They would contain the threat and hope the planet's hostile environment would eventually destroy the bioship naturally. That's when Captain Deho stepped forward. "We'll handle it," he said simply. Admiral Thermac's tentacles twitched nervously. "Captain, with all due respect, even your remarkable forces cannot survive those conditions. The sulfur content in the atmosphere alone will corrode any equipment within hours." "Less corrosive than Venus?" replied Major Hyen Wu calmly, checking his gear with the casual efficiency that had become terrifyingly familiar to Coalition observers. "We actually vacation there. Nice hot springs, if you can handle the pressure." Velthar felt his mandibles click in that nervous habit he'd developed since meeting humans. Major Venus is classified as uninhabitable, even by Deathworld standards. How do you vacation on a planet with surface temperatures over 700 degrees? An atmospheric pressure that would crush most buildings. Underwater cities, Hyenwu explained as if it were obvious. Pressure's actually pretty comfortable once you get used to it. The geothermal energy is fantastic for power generation. The human fleet approached Pyrrhian 3 with their typical disregard for what other species considered impossible. Their ships dove directly into the storm-racked atmosphere, using the gravitational anomalies that had destroyed Coalition probes as navigational aids through orbital monitors. Velthar watched something that defied every rule of military engagement he'd ever learned. Captain Deho led his forces directly into the heart of the volcanic system. Not despite the hellish conditions, but because of them. Alpha Team, this is command. Deho's voice crackled over the radio. Use Lava Flow 7 as your primary. Highway. The molten rock will mask your heat signatures from Vex biosensors. Copy that, Command, replied Sergeant Bora. This lava is actually moving pretty slowly compared to the stuff we get from Mount Fuji. Should be easy to navigate. The humans were using rivers of molten rock as transportation routes. They moved across the volcanic landscape like they belonged there, their formations perfectly adapted to terrain that would incinerate most galactic citizens instantly. When Vex defenders emerged from the crashed bioship, they found themselves fighting in conditions they'd never encountered. The humans used toxic gas clouds as concealment, timing their movements with volcanic eruptions to mask their approach. Specialist Taman actually used the planet's gravitational anomalies to slingshot explosives directly into the bioship's critical systems with pinpoint accuracy. This is incredible, whispered Tactical Officer Zillineth. They're treating an active volcanic system like a tactical advantage. The final assault was a masterpiece of impossible warfare. Lieutenant Sujin's team infiltrated the bioship through lava tubes, using the molten rock to cut through the alien vessel's organic hull. Corporal Dongwu placed charges at structural weak points he identified by analyzing how the crash had damaged the ship's biomechanical systems. When the massive bioship finally exploded, the detonation was visible from 3 star systems away. The blast took half of Pyrrhian 3's surface with it, creating a new crater that would glow for decades. The humans simply relocated to a safe distance and calmly waited for pickup. Discussing the operation like they'd just completed a routine training exercise. Beautiful fireworks, commented Major Hyenwu, as debris rained down around their extraction point. Which reminds me of the New Year celebrations back in Seoul, except bigger. As the human transport ships lifted off from the devastated world, Velthar finally asked the question that had been haunting him for months. Ambassador Kunsu, he said over the comm channel, how do you do it? How do your people function? In conditions that would kill any other known species in the galaxy. Kyung-Su's scarred face appeared on the view screen. For the first time since they'd met, his smile seemed genuinely warm rather than predatory. Commander, 6 months ago you asked for reinforcements to help fight an impossible enemy? You got were humans, survivors of a Class 12 Deathworld. That's been trying to kill us since we crawled out of the primordial soup. We didn't bring superior technology or overwhelming numbers to this war. Then what did you bring? The knowledge that the universe is trying to kill us anyway, so we might as well make it work for us while we're here. Every challenge our planet threw at us, the storms, the predators, the geological disasters, the climate changes, they all taught us the same lesson. When you can't change your environment, you learn to use it as a weapon. As the human fleet prepared to return to their distant home, Velthar sat in his command chair and composed a final entry in the galactic database. His words would be studied by military strategists for generations to come. Species, human, homeworld. Sol 3, designation Earth, Class 12, Deathworld. Population, approximately 8 billion. Military assessment, devastatingly effective. Tactical recommendation. When requesting military assistance from this species, be extremely specific about what kind of help you actually want. These beings don't just fight wars, they weaponize reality itself. He paused, then added a personal note that would become legendary among Coalition forces. The humans have saved the Coalition, but more importantly, They've fundamentally changed how we think about warfare, survival, and what it means to be alive in a universe that doesn't care about our comfort or safety. They've shown us that sometimes the best way to survive impossible odds is to make the impossible work for you instead. The Vex War was over. The galaxy was safe. And everyone now understood that somewhere in the outer spiral arm, on a small blue world that most species would consider uninhabitable, lived the most dangerous predators the universe had ever produced. They called themselves humans. And they just taught the galaxy that sometimes the best allies come from the places you'd never think to look. The end.